Get out there, go to events. I know what it's like. It's tiring. You've had a full day at work and then you've got an event coming up for somewhere in the city or wherever, and you think, I just can't be bothered. I want to go home. I want to eat food, watch TV, whatever it is. But I would strongly encourage you to put yourself out there, go to these events, force yourself to talk to people. And what you'll probably find is some people have got some really good ideas. Welcome to the Rogue L&D Hot Shots podcast, a short podcast allowing you to meet some of the brilliant folk driving people performance and development forward in an informal and human way. My name's Tom Bailey, award-winning L&D leader and passionate maverick for all things development. Join me as I ask just 10 questions of some of the industry's most innovative and interesting people. Tell us about yourself. Hi, my name's Tom Bailey. I'm obviously the creator of the Rogue L&D Podcast. I'm also the winner of the Dr. Alistair Ritt L&D Professional of the Year 2025, which I'm super stoked about. Thank you so much to the community for that. I've been asked to come on this show and actually present myself, so uncomfortably I am here introducing myself, and it's lovely to meet you all. What are you passionate about? Well, I'm really passionate about driving performance change through great, innovative learning and development. It won't surprise you, but the traditional ways in which a lot of us do learning and development don't work and haven't worked for years. If you've listened to my podcast, you would have come across people like David James and Guy Wallace and Bob Mosher and so many more who have been saying this a lot longer than I have. But I'm a big passionate fan of doing learning and development that really changes behavior. So my passion really sits in how we make a change in organizations. We talk about learning and development. No one else really does in businesses. What we really should be talking about is how we enable the business through their people to reach much better business results. That's what I'm passionate about. What's the best L&D you've seen? It would be remiss of me if I did not mention my favorite book, Nick Shackleton-Jones' How Do People Learn? I know it's not a course or program which you're expecting me to answer with, but it is seminal in terms of my development. What he talks about around emotional connection to the content that we're trying to enable people with is brilliant, and I recommend it to anyone I work with. Another opportunity actually to listen to Nick Shackleton-Jones outside of this podcast where I had the opportunity to interview him is also he was on David James's excellent learning and development podcast. He's in one of the first episodes about 3 years ago. It's a really good episode and I strongly recommend you listen to it. Nick lays out quite straightforwardly his approach to how we really drive behavior change and help people to be enabled in a better way. Outside of that, I would also say probably my favorite content that I've ever been involved in or program I've ever been involved in was with the lads at Yarno while I was working at Blackmores. And we used Yarno. If you haven't come across it, check it out. It's really good. It's micro learning, spaced repetition based through an app. It's very much human-centered. It's very much built around key measures, so you can see all the data that sits around it. But what I really like about it is it's quite fun, and it doesn't feel like you're trying to develop someone. It certainly doesn't feel like they're going through training because, well, it's not training. In fact, they probably forget that they're actually getting better at anything. That's why it's so good, and it's a great way to get people better at what they're doing. Favorite hand gesture? I think you call it heart finger or something, is this one. I think it's from South Korea originally. I used to live in Asia, which was awesome and had a great time and learnt a lot. But the reason it's my favourite, one, because it's lovely. It's a little heart. That's beautiful. But really slightly naughty reason is because you see people who don't really understand that, or they're in pictures and they're obviously surrounded by people doing the heart, and they just have a go and they kind of don't know what it's about. So they do that. It's like pointing at something or that. Or even worse, they think it's all about money. So they're just doing this. So yeah, I always quite like the heart. It's beautiful. One thing you didn't learn. how to do any of this podcasting. I didn't know where to start, and it is very much on the job learning. Luckily, I had some excellent help through Darren at Podpaste, who helps me with my episodes. I also have some excellent help through L&D professionals who have blazed a trail ahead of me. I mentioned David James earlier, but you've also got someone like Jess Almy, who I've had a chat with. Check out her podcast. I think it's something like L&D Must Change, which is so good. And she's got a range of great guests that she brings on. And I love the opportunity to catch up with her, share stories, what works, what doesn't work, and a couple of trade secrets, which I won't say on this, but really helpful to kind of learn and help me develop. So I guess if you use the 70-20-10, there's a lot of that 20% going on. The other thing I guess I haven't learned is learning and development. Not many people, in fact, I'm not sure I've ever met someone who has studied L&D at university and then or has moved straight from school into learning and development. I'm sure there's some people out there, but most of us just learn by doing. We get thrown into it through some kind of side route. We might have been a manager or a leader of people and thought, actually, coaching, I quite enjoy coaching. Why don't I expand my coaching into other practices in learning and development? And that's beautiful. That's great, the way in which we've all come together from different fields. But certainly from a formal point of view, I did do my CIPD learning and development diploma, but I have to say most of my learning has happened on the job. In fact, pretty much all of it has happened on the job. And so, yeah, learning and development, I think, is something that I'd say I haven't learned formally. Proudest moment? I'd probably pick out two. Getting into L&D in the first place. So I was working at Nestle. I was actually working at the Purina side, which is a beautiful business. I was something called a category manager at the time. So I was managing the relationship between retailers and the organization and the data the stories that we tell using really strong shopper data. And the opportunity came up to move into learning and development within the sales capability area, which I jumped at. And I will always be thankful to Nestle for moving me across. I've still got lots of friends at Nestle around the world. And yeah, that's one of my proudest moments. So again, thank you to everyone who helped me do that. My second is then working at Blackmores and creating the Blackmores Commercial Academy, which won a couple of awards and was, I think, was a real groundbreaking piece of work because it enabled people to take responsibility for their own development. It was a different way to think about development outside of just training, but actually there was a lot of different elements and principles that went into it, and I was really proud of that. Some of the things we did were really groundbreaking. So yeah, I'd call out that as probably my second proudest moment. Worst experience in L&D? Probably too many to mention because I have learnt so much in learning and development, and I'm a firm believer that things have to go wrong for you to really learn some heavy stuff. And the opportunities are there to fail and to get things wrong all the time and then move forward from it, learn our lessons. And you need a safe environment to do that. I'd probably call out a couple of specific examples. David James on this podcast talked about, I think it was something like he was talking to a lot of factory workers, and basically they were like, what the hell is the point in this training? And I've certainly been in that scenario where people just haven't got the time, they're not interested, and the content that I'm training them on is a bit compliant, a bit boring, a bit dry. So yeah, I won't name names or give situations on that, but certainly there were. Also another time where I was working at an organisation and they were working with retailers, and one of the things, which I just think is unbelievable, one of the things they did, instead of engaging with the internal teams, of which they had many internal teams, so using internal teams to facilitate their workshops with their retailers, they would pay an expert to come in and facilitate it. I just thought it was a complete waste of money. I won't tell you how much they spent, but it was crazy amounts of money. And it was a massive missed opportunity to actually upskill the people internally to get better at that and to really show value to the retailer they were working with by facilitating it in a really compelling, engaging way. I just thought that was such a missed opportunity. And certainly that was one of my low points, that I couldn't seem to affect that. I think if you want to know more low points and worst experiences, you're going to have to buy me a beer or at least a coffee, and then I'll tell you all my worst experiences. But I think we'll leave it there for the podcast. Best celebrity moment. I love this, and I'll tell you the story about why or how this question came around. I was at the L&D Symposium, which is held at the Hunter Valley, and whatever year it was, I don't recall. And I went to dinner and I sat next to this guy called Paul Scott, who I'd never met before. And you know what it's like when you're at an exhibit, you're at one of these conferences and you go to the dinner. And if you're on your own, you never really know what people are going to be like. Are you going to gel with them? You can have a good conversation. Turns out Paul and I had a great conversation, and he's a brilliant guy. And so we gelled. I consider him a mentor, I would say now. He's fantastic. And we just started telling stories about celebrities. It was brilliant. It was just, the more stories he told, the more I remembered stories that I had. And he was on the podcast. He tells a story about Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall. So check it out. It's a good one. But he's got many more. Get in touch with him. Ask him his favourite celebrity story. Mine has to be one that I don't think I've told before. When I started my career, I started at a company called Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and it was the first job I did outside of university. And I was responsible for a branch, so essentially renting cars and vans. And it was on the south coast of England. And a guy came in and said, "Oh yeah, I've got a celebrity. He's going to need a van from you. He's going to need it for a week." And I said, "Okay, yeah, great, brilliant. Well, he'll need to come in because we'll need to see his documents if he's going to drive it and go through all the paperwork and stuff." I said, "Okay, yeah, great." So he came in, and it was Keith Harris. And if you don't know who Keith Harris is, then Google him. But he used to have a duck called Orville, like a ventriloquist duck. I'm sorry if I've spoiled that for anyone who thought it was a real duck. But he used to have Orville. So it was amazing seeing like this childhood hero renting a van on the south coast of England from me. I have to say, he did try and beat me down a lot on price. So I'm not casting dispersions on him. He obviously knows a bargain when he finds it. But that was a very surreal moment, having grown up watching him on TV and then having him come and rent a van from me was strange, but brilliant story in itself. Something not many people know about you. Well, most people know that I love Dutch radio, so I'm not going to talk about that. But when I was younger, I won a Lurpak drawing competition, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the lovely people at Lurpak for sending me a kite at the age of 6 or 7. I can't actually remember what I drew either, but I like to remember it that I was one of the best drawings they had, and so they sent me a kite. But a couple of years ago, I was talking to my parents about this, and they said, no, you were one of the first entries in like the first 1,000 entries, so therefore they sent you a kite, which kind of ruins it a little bit and does question my ability to draw. But you know, I got a kite. Thanks, Lurpak. That was great, and maybe that was the start of my love of FMCG industry. Who knows? Best advice. I think I'd start by telling everyone that the people I've had on this podcast so far and will have got much better advice than I'm going to give you now. So check back, meet the folks on the podcast, reach out to them, and you'll get some really solid advice and some really helpful ways to think about your career and how you hold yourself, how you represent yourself, especially in the L&D industry. But if you push me, I would say that building genuine relationships is really important. It's important for you to grow. It's certainly been important for me in my development and has helped me. I mean, literally, there are too numerous people to try and name for you now, but I hope they all know that I am so grateful for everything they've always done for me, that no one really picks up the phone anymore, but I can reach out to them and I can ask them stuff and they'll help me. And I like to think I would do that for others as well. I would say, though, that you need to build genuine and deep relationships, though, not just superficial, what can you do for me? You need to help people, and you need to have a relationship which is trusting and open in this industry. So that would be my advice. Get out there, go to events. I know what it's like. It's tiring. you've had a full day at work and then you've got an event coming up for somewhere in the city or wherever, and you think, oh, you know, I just can't be bothered. I want to go home. I want to eat food, watch TV, whatever it is. But I would strongly encourage you to put yourself out there, go to these events, force yourself to talk to people. And what you'll probably find is some people have got some really good ideas. And you've probably got some good ideas that you can share. So I mentioned the L&D Symposium earlier and how I met Paul Scott. Incidentally, the year before that, I went to the dinner, had the same experience. And I ended up meeting Dr. Jen Fromm, based in Melbourne, who's a change expert, who's also been on the podcast. And we had a brilliant time talking about change all night. Fantastic. So you never know how great these conversations are going to be. So my advice is get out there, meet some people, and enjoy it. It's a great industry to be in. One other thing I've found is that no one's ever turned me down for being on the podcast or being up for a conversation, and that's globally. There's some pretty big names that I've managed to meet through this podcast who've incredibly graciously agreed to be on this and share their wisdom. I don't pay anyone for it, and I really appreciate their input. They're fascinating people. So reach out to people, start a conversation. I think you'll be surprised at what you might learn or pick up.
Thank you to our guest and to you for listening. If you want to boost the impact of your organisation's people development practices, I'd love to connect. You can find me at thomasbailey.co. Alternatively, you can look me up on LinkedIn.